Welcome to Prisoners of Truth podcast. Today we've got a guest, Jeff Tidwell. And what we're going to be talking about is the U.S. media Zeitgeist and hate crime hoaxes. And a little bit after that, we're just going to have a formal, just regular, off-the-cuff discussion. Not formal, off-the-cuff. But anyway, here we are. So yeah, Jeff, would you like to introduce yourself? Let us know what you're into, how you got into this, what your political interests are.
Well, yeah. So Jeff Tidwell here.
This is Jeff.
And you can find me at BladeJB343 on Twitter and actually pretty much every other media platform. So just wanted to get that out there up front in case I forget, as we have bigger things to discuss. But I do consider myself to be political independent, and I try to be an independent-minded person that searches for truth, comfortable and uncomfortable truth. So I guess, this is one of those things where I'm going to make a gaffe right up front, to set the stage just right. I'm going to call myself an intellectual just because of the knowledge-seeking aspect of it. It is kind of addictive to get more information. And when I took a break, I actually took a break from my cell phone for about a week last year. And I got to tell you, I mean, like, there is certainly an information addiction.
Oh, for sure. I agree with that.
Yeah, our culture is definitely wrapped in it right now. It is... It's not a joke. By the way, we do not have Tommy with us today. Hopefully next week. Anyway, there's information overload, and it's definitely caused us and our habits to change, especially when it comes to news.
Yep.
Yeah, I absolutely. It's harder to prioritize what is real, what is good news. What is a good news source? Because, I mean, people now, I think, our lives are so, I see this sort of, I think Scott Adams would talk about Trump derangement syndrome, but it's also just this sort of mass depression that I sense in a lot of people, I guess, of a particular political persuasion, where if you're in a, it depends on which political party is in power and who's doing really well. It could be, depending on the year, it could change. But there's this sort of seasonal depression, the world come crashing down when the political party of a partisan's choice isn't doing well, or they're in an echo chamber where they are experiencing nothing but sensationalistic bullshit. Right?
Yep. Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah, it's like eating a really bad diet. It's like eating a really crappy diet. It's like all filler and junk and nothing actually substantive, which is dangerous.
Yeah, it's junk food. Junk food for the mind and the soul. I mean, and it's funny though. Everything has an inverse. Everything has a flip side, and I think one of the flip sides as an artist. So actually I really should go more into my background a little bit. So I am a card-carrying member of the Screen Actors Guild. So I do have an acting background. I hold a certification in broadcast journalism. I have created works in mixed media, including photography and stand-up comedy writing, and you can look at my Twitter. It's also kind of an art project. So I look for the art in things. I have an artist's eye, I think. I'm not sure if I'm good. No artist. It's one of those things. No artist wants to say they're good. You'll always see them be humble, and I agree because I don't know. I can't judge myself. I like to allow other people to judge me.
Well, I've got a little bit of a background in art, like painting. I usually work collaboratively, and it's so funny. If I ever do an exhibition, I haven't in a while, but I had somebody once ask me, like, or what material do you go off of to do your work? And I don't really, I just go, you know what? I just get some colors together that I like and splash it on a canvas. I don't get all esoteric about that. So
that's cool, man. So have you noticed, have you been in the acting world, like in the current climate at all?
No, I haven't acted in, I think it's getting up to nearly 10 years. I think I last did some theater in 2010. So it's actually been quite a while since I've acted.
I just asked that because, it's hard to believe that, or it's hard to really think of a group of people or a class of professions that shill so hard for diversity and then wholesale reject diversity of thought, like wholesale.
Yeah, I mean, again, that's another one of those difficult questions where is there strength in diversity, or is the individual stronger? Is a sort of unified front better? I do want.
Well, I don't mind diversity. I just wish that people would stop harping so much about racial diversity and start talking about actual diversity of opinions and thought processes and and again, there's this thing where it's like diversity is always considered good. Well, I think you have to take things on their basis. Just because something different is different does not inherently mean it has value.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would say that exactly. I don't think having an absolutist point of view about anything is very wise. I do want to deliver a really quick persuasion kill shot, one-liner on the point I was getting to, just that depressed artists are better artists. I think it's true. They say that comedy writing, especially when somebody just had I think the Larry Sanders show actually made fun of this in one of their episodes.
Oh, Tommy is with us. Sorry to interrupt you.
Hey, Tommy.
Hey, Tommy, I thought that when I started the call, it would have given you an option to join. I apologize. All right. You want to continue? Sorry.
Hi.
Absolutely. Well, I was just saying that, sometimes when somebody has just been broken up with, that's when the sharpest, spiciest jokes come out. I mean, it's depression and anger lead to better art sometimes. So what I was saying earlier, just to close that up, and then we can move on to diversity of thought, which and also as it applies to artists. I do think that some artists are driven by, even if they're driven by things that some other people might consider irrational, like, for example, the Trump derangement. They're feeding off of these negative vibes, artificial or not, these vibes, and they're building better art. So the consumer is actually getting a better product sometimes. That's one of my observations that I haven't really heard many people talk about. But I do agree with the notion that diversity of thought, instead of focusing on this identity that we're given at birth, it's not something you can change. So how can you judge somebody for being a specific race or religion that they were born into, or you really shouldn't judge the person for any of their immutable characteristics. I just don't believe in that. So I don't think we should try to diversify so different cultures have representation. But I do think that diversity of thought is what's under attack right now with the onslaught of censorship.
Yeah, agreed.
Hey, Tommy, how's it going, man?
Hey.
So if anybody's listening, the title is messed up. I thought I updated it. It says we're talking to Fincastle Underground, but we're not. So anyway, all right. So where should we start? Should we start with what's been going on with the U.S.? You said you want to talk about the U.S. media zeitgeist. I'd like to hear kind of you start that, and we can respond to whatever you have to say.
Absolutely. Well, did you guys see the Scott Adams Zeitgeist whiteboard the other day?
I actually saw part of it. And And I wanted to clarify. So the term kind of means like the air of the time. It's like sort of the spirit of the time, right? Isn't that what Zeitgeist
that's
means?
a good approximation. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Zeitgeist means literal translation is time spirit. The spirit
Okay.
of the times right now. The way people see the world and see reality at the given time right now.
Right.
Yeah. The scent of the air, I guess.
Yeah.
The thoughts in people's heads.
The current cultural paradigm, whether it's a sort of micro paradigm or a macro paradigm. Yeah. Well, right now, we're seeing a lot of the social justice. I mean, that's really what it boils down to. Popular culture is inundated with social justice and cultural Marxism messaging, which, there might be some positive aspects to that and some negative aspects to that. But it is something that is certainly present. And I think that if there's clearly people noticing it, and there's people that believe in it like it's, as I call it, a modern religion. They don't even know they believe in something that's a contrived ideology.
Yeah, I feel like that's a big problem I've had with the modern left is like when I was identified with liberals and the left, it was all about like facts and reason and, using common sense. And that has gone fully out the window with the modern Democratic Party.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and that's the strange thing is there's so many different things that have gone on with like the left, and it's almost as if in the Obama years they were sort of hijacked, and everybody's mentality was kind of twisted, because the way I always think of the left is anti-war. I thought they were the sensible ones, but they seem to be the ones that are beating the drum for war more than anybody that I'm seeing on the right doing.
Yeah, I mean it's definitely a culture of mono thought in our current media environment. I mean to the point where almost every major network is the same. It's kind of the reason why independent content creators are destined to take their spot. Writing was kind of on the wall as soon as the internet got created, but the last 4 years have definitely accelerated us to a position where news is not the mainstream media anymore. Information, technology, and people and ingenuity has given us video platforming has given us communications to the likes of which nobody ever really could have imagined. And the mainstream media is basically like a zombie. There are multi-million-dollar bloated corporations paying people hundreds of thousands of dollars a year to give their quote unquote opinion TM, but paid for by McDonald's. And it's like normal people who are actually being given the opportunity to have real journalism again and given the opportunity to hear somebody speak from the heart and to really give their opinion and not just try to propagandize them. You can't go back. You can't go back to it once you've experienced what it's like to actually have good information again. And I'm somebody who can maybe watch 2 shows on Fox News max because the rest of them sound exactly like CNN, MSNBC, NBC to me.
Independence is a breath of fresh air after you have been spending your entire life listening to contrived media and stories being sold to push a narrative that might be pro-war, that might be pro-corporation, that might just to soften the people up, to allow different changes to happen worldwide. That how much time does it take to soften up an entire generation for what people call globalism.
Right.
It takes a long time to change. I think President Obama actually said that change, especially in the United States, is very glacial. So, and the thing is, though, people just up until the internet age, everything in the media was quite controlled. Wouldn't you agree?
I would agree.
Yeah, I mean, now we know because we have. It's like when WikiLeaks came out initially, and they started dropping things for the past 15 years or so. You never knew any of these things that were going on.
Well,
and now now the emperor's clothes the emperor's naked.
Well, I'll tell you one thing. I mean, I remember when the Occupy movement was going on. I was very much into that. I thought it was really cool. I liked, because that was like when we had like hacktivists and there's some content creators and stuff like that going on. And it's so interesting. I never really thought that I would have seen myself kind of supporting the Trump movement. I remember seeing him in 2015 and just thinking he was a complete idiot. But what was I going to say? But that's the thing that is so interesting, is the fact that we had these people in the Occupy movement and all that really wanted to see some change. And there was a big chunk of those individuals that were able to see a chance that there could be some change, with the whole Trump thing. And I remember even like 5 years ago researching about globalism. I thought that I was a nut when I was researching globalism. I thought it was just a conspiracy theory. And when I saw some of those things being confirmed around the Trump campaign, that's when something clicked in my head, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to give this a try. I'm going to give this a go and vote, that way. So I don't know how you feel about that, but.
Boone?
No, I was just going to say it wasn't really much of a choice in 2016, in my personal opinion. I mean, I think a lot of people were in that. And then now in 2020, it's going to be different, but people are still going to vote for Trump.
I think that Trump is almost, I would agree with Styx, Hexenhammer 666. I would agree with him on this, that the likelihood is that Trump will win because there's too many. He stacked the deck with too many advantages: the incumbent advantage, the economy advantage. If nothing changes, even people that are on the left they really have to agree with the anti-war stance that Trump has taken, comparative to the past, probably every other president going back to God knows when.
Yeah, but you assuming that they see reality for what it is, which they don't. They, for example, his push to decriminalize homosexuality around the world is they're making it out to be this is racist now. This is. Aren't they? Isn't the left kind of pissed that he's getting out of Syria or something?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's definitely a core set of people who would fall into that category. I think the point is that they're shrinking, though. But you're very right that there's definitely a set of people who are involved with American politics who are doing that after image of Trump thing, where anything Trump does is evil no matter what, and they've totally divorced themselves from logic. Hopefully, the hope is that that's shrinking.
It's absolutely.
Yeah, we have to be against what he does. Not we don't have to act on principle. Our only principle is we have to do the opposite of what he does.
No, and it pigeonholes him too. It actually gives him an immense amount of power to control their opinions, which I don't know why you would ever set yourself up like that.
Those are the ills of party loyalism. You don't want to be married to a party. I believe in like pendulum effect. I think, things kind of work in waves, and you need to be able to look at situations to see what's going on, to see, okay, am I being manipulated? Am I too entrenched in one side? And people need to have the foresight and the humility to be able to make shifts in opinion. and I think some people just got so hardlined, especially the fact that a lot of leftist rhetoric is taught in schools. So I think we got people that are sort of just indoctrinated. They think this is the way it is, and this is the way it's always going to be. So I'm going to root for my team no matter what.
Well, they're coming into their adulthood, and this is the first time that they've been able to choose, what they've been able to choose a direction for reality. And they're coming out of college, and like you say, they're being taught, largely in many of the colleges in America, as everybody knows, there is a slight leftward tilt, and a lot of those leftist ideologies are becoming more commonplace as a result of it. So that's something we should certainly consider. And it does become truly difficult. I was trying to articulate it earlier, but there is this sort of I don't know, magnet effect or some kind of effect where, like, the more there's a breaking point, there has to be a breaking point or a changing point. It's like a snapping point. But right now, how polarized the two sides are in the United States. Let's just go with anti-Trump and pro-Trump sides, because that's kind of what we're discussing at this point. Right? Because you're talking about that small demographic of people that just, there's people that oppose Trump on the left that have reasonable grounds to oppose him. They just disagree with his economic policies. They disagree with his management of healthcare and other considerations as well. They have a bunch of really sort of credible and substantive critiques of Trump that I like to listen to. But then,
or at least they can give them to you, even if you don't agree with them, even if ultimately they might be wrong. At least they can give you some reason outside of Orange Man bad.
Absolutely, yeah. They can at least go a little further and show that it isn't just about his character. It isn't just about the person.
Exactly.
It's a very important question. It's a very important. I hate to use this word, but I'll use it. It's a maturity thing. It's a growing up thing to be able to forgive people and to be able to also separate individuals from the bigger picture. If you hate this individual, but they're bringing, they're doing a moral thing. They're bringing goodness to their country or their whatever they're servicing. You have to inevitably separate the heart. I'm gonna separate the art from the artist kind of guy. So,
yeah,
totally, and even more so when it's life. It's like there's an inherent need to recognize reality if you're going to operate at the highest level that you can. And what that means sometimes is realizing that somebody who you hate with a fiery passion is capable of doing something that you like. If you can admit that, and if you can also see the flip of that, somebody who you love with all your heart and just think the world of is perfectly capable and of doing something very evil and bad. And it's just like you said. I think it's a maturity thing, but it's I'll go even further and I'll say it's an emotional maturity thing, and it's very tied to whether or not you can have introspect with yourself. Because if you can't, you're stuck in this world where it's everybody else's fault and you're always right, and that's a very tough place to be.
For sure.
But I do think it connects with the media because it's just a constant onslaught. And you can't really blame a whole lot of people right now who are in a mindset of Orange Man bad because, look, propaganda works and there's a lot of it going on right now.
Oh, absolutely. You can't deny the power of the persuasion on the Democratic side because they have, like Scott Adams says, which is at Scott Adams Says on Twitter. Is going to do a little promotion for Scott. He doesn't need it, but
oh yeah.
I'm sorry. What were we saying? We're talking about the left, the anti-Trump left.
Yeah, I was just pretty much saying that it's hard for me to blame them because not all of them, but it's just it's so propagandized too.
They've been inundated, and after a while, confirmation bias does take over. And you're like your brain pathways that intake and store information. It's like muscle memory. They just get hit with the same information again and again and again. It's why Trump says things twice sometimes for emphasis, and it just kind of puts it in your head twice. But they're doing it, day after day after day. And of course, I do believe that there are some individuals out there that will never be, quote unquote, cured of TDS.
Sure, just like there's some people who lived in the Soviet Union and well, maybe their parents told them about it, but there were some people who lived in the Soviet Union and long after it fell would sing its praises because propaganda works, and unfortunately, it's something that you have to accept that about life, that not everybody is going to have it in them, by whatever means that is, to overcome it.
Yeah.
It's sad. It's sad because it leads to a lot of people who don't think for themselves.
Well, they need authority figures to turn to, which is why I think that's, people have wondered why these motivational speakers like Jordan Peterson have come out and been very popular, and why I guess the sort of self-esteem movement that's happening is something that these folks could really use. The folks that appeal to authority and just always take, I guess, and this is not harsh language, but I think a lot of people, this might trigger some people, so trigger warning, the child's view about adult situations. When you're taking a sort of horror movie view, like you say, the emotional intelligence, when it just ain't there for somebody, they do need to look inward. And if they have nothing to look to, if they already have low self-esteem, and if they're already, and I don't want to point fingers, but social justice can certainly bring this into the picture. If they've been told their group, for instance, is oppressive and they should hate themselves on some measure, to some degree, that can be very destructive. And I think that leads to, that leads to a lot of the, like I say, the mass depression that we're experiencing among larger and larger groups of people in America.
Well, I wanted to touch on the mass depression thing for a minute, because, for a while I was like disturbed when I saw the far left do things. Like I had a friend kind of pressure me into, holding to all of their policies very publicly. And that's when I got alarmed and started looking into things. But it wasn't really until recently where I felt a touch of depression, because when this Jussie Smollett thing happened, I kind of laughed it off, but like it really started getting to me when I started thinking about how it was a hoax, and the media seemed disappointed to find out it was a hoax. Like it seemed like they wanted it to be real, and I was really thinking about the polarization in all this, and I think it finally hit me where it's like I'm so tired of seeing that sensationalism and all this, maybe these reactions to this mass depression, that it's kind of ended up affecting me in a way. You know what I mean? I don't know if that makes sense to you guys, or you guys have felt that way before.
Oh, I can certainly speak on this, but
yeah. Well, like what have you? Yeah, I'd like to hear you speak on that. Yeah.
Well, I think earlier I was speaking about how, information can be addictive. I think that at a certain point in time, there is this divide between rationality and irrationality, sanity and insanity. And I think that to prevent you from getting to that divide too easily, your brain does introduce cognitive dissonance. This is my understanding. I'm not a trained psychologist. I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm not a therapist. I'm not formally trained, but I do see this as a possibility, and it feels to be correct that people's brains protect them sometimes from the truth, because it's too painful. And it would also have, people talk about gaslighting. It would have the capacity potentially to make them question their own reality. So it's a slow walk to get out of these situations where you're so partisan or you're so convinced in a specific thing, that you start to crave it. You start to crave, the Jussie Smollett. You say like this situation where people almost wanted it to be true because it would fit their view of reality, and they're getting tired. Perhaps it's conjecture, but they're getting tired perhaps of their reality not matching my reality and your reality, and the general why aren't people more annoyed over this might be a question. Why aren't I actually have literally seen friends of mine on Facebook say, well, when the U.S. Coast Guard story dropped, the white supremacist there, they said like, why aren't more people crazy about this story versus the Jussie Smollett one? So they were trying to validate the Smollett story, and I'd say neither of these stories is anything to scream about.
I mean, it definitely looked like a psyop, when that popped up.
Oh, that's a psyop.
Yeah, because that's the thing that happened is because I like to do this on Facebook. I still use it, but I like to drop articles of things that I learned. And it's kind of funny. It looks like people might think, man, why is he always dropping these articles right away? What it is I'm on Twitter and everything drops right away. So if you're on Twitter and you put it into Normieville, aka Facebook, it looks pretty on the edge. But as soon as I posted some very nice memes about Jussie Smollett, because I felt like that story really vindicated people like me and other people who have been warning about intersectional racism, because that's really what we've been seeing. But when I shared this, boom, somebody that I know who is like so Democrat that you could almost call him an operative, it was like, oh yeah, it's like crazy what's going on. Then they dropped the story about that. I didn't even respond, but all I saw was like white guy with guns. So I'm like, that's definitely a spook working for the government, and that's a psyop. But I think a lot of people are awake, because I haven't heard too much outrage about it, but the media definitely is trying to spark something there.
Yeah, for me, there does come a time. There's this book. It's kind of a self-help book, but it's in the format of a novella. It's called The Celestine Prophecy, and the reason I bring that up is there is this one part of it in which the protagonist talks about how noticing coincidences is part of the key to progressing in life. Learning when you start to subconsciously pick up on important cues that lead you to better outcomes, it's good to pay attention to them. So after it's kind of, the thing is though, you don't even need to have this keen eye for conspiracy theories. You don't need to have this all-consuming awareness to see that this story is not very credible, because immediately, for one thing, the timing is perfect to go with the the fallout of the Jussie Smollett story, but also that you never see anything about white nationalists until it's convenient.
Yeah, in the white nationalists that are out there, because
of course they exist.
Yeah, some of the ones that are out there, when you actually see them, or if you've ever talked to them on the internet, they're not big and scary like the left would make you think. I would actually say that they're soy boys in a way, and I don't really I use that term like, well, the ones that I've known, like, well, the groypers. I guess the identitarians that I've seen are like what's known as the groyper community on Twitter. And
you're telling me about that.
Yeah, and there's a lot of soy in that group, I think.
You're saying you were saying that the groypers, who are these sort of crypto-fascist figures, right?
Yeah, no, you could say that for sure.
They're sort of they're not very obvious, but they're identitarians.
Well, yeah,
sure. It's a big inside joke for white identitarians on Twitter for sure. But there's a lot of diversity. But the one thing that is not super diverse is that and this is why we call them crypto anything, is they're using their own special lingo. You know what I mean? Like if you read all their posts, it's just a bunch of random shit, really, unless you know what they're talking about.
Say like if they do a stream and they say it's a cozy space stream, what that means is that there's going to be a lot of hate, a lot of hateful and racist rhetoric.
Yeah, and it also means that it's a cozy space is also explicit for them. It's like a safe space.
Well, you said, yeah, that was what you were saying earlier, that there are some, very clear links between the behavior of these individuals and the hardcore social justice warriors out there. They have similar, it's turtles all the way down with this. No matter which direction you go on, to the left or the right or whatever direction it might be, it all comes down to a lack of self-esteem and sort of wanting to lash out and control other people but the problem is it's in a lot of cases, and I don't want to speak for all, about all people this way, but the people that tend to fall into these groups have trouble controlling their own lives.
Sure. I mean, it's an extension of their own insecurities as far as their authoritarianism comes from. This is not necessarily specific to any one authoritarian. It's almost all authoritarians.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, no, and I do, like I said earlier, I think that there is a value in community and culture and group. But at the end of the day, all you have is yourself and what you believe in, what you believe to be true. And when you're constantly looking outward for others' validation and you don't have a strong sense of self, I mean, that's when an ideology like one of these crypto fascists, or on the inverse, the social justice side, it just grabs hold and it becomes a large part of their core identity. And I don't think it's very healthy, but I don't want to be too judgmental,
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I understand that, but I like looking
to each their own
at this stuff. Yeah, to each their own, but
to each their own. I want to, I do. I'm a strong believer in agency. So, and I do believe that if somebody, I actually that is one of the topics that I was thinking about recently. I've been kind of mulling about, and I think this is something that's on the tips of our tongues constantly. It is this question of what deserves to be censored, like what. And I consider myself almost an absolutist on free speech, but there are some things, and there's like, where do you draw the line?
Right. Yeah, for me, it's doxing, credible threats of violence, and that's pretty much it as far as speech goes. Now, I mean, like child pornography, obviously, and like murder snuff films could probably be censored without me being bothered as well.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I wouldn't. Yeah, I think that's a good place to draw the line.
But that's why I like libertarians, and that's why I like to think of the political spectrum as more of a polar thing between authoritarians and non-authoritarians, because it really doesn't matter the words you use, it doesn't matter the causes that you champion, it doesn't matter the politics by which you get into power. You're going to be clearly aligned with either control over people for whatever reason, nefarious, benevolent, or allowing people to be individualistic and control their own lives.
Yeah, and I do think that it's interesting that you should talk about the continuum between libertarianism and authoritarianism and where people fall on that, and say that's more relevant than left or right, for example, because I think those terms encompass too much on each side to have any real meaning at this point. There's so many things you could say are right or left. It really does come down more to the authoritarian versus the libertarian, but I think that actually extrapolates as well to the nationalism versus globalism.
Sure. I mean, I definitely think that's true in most cases when you overlap globalism versus, nationalism, with globalism being authoritarianism, hopefully nationalism being, independence, but it's not always the case. We can definitely for sure say that globalism is authoritarian, but we can't say for sure that nationalism won't be authoritarianism. So it's kind of I can see where you're going with that, but to me it makes more sense because nationalism is a really good thing when it's utilized properly, but it's just like anything else. When the in-group preferences reach a fever pitch, that's when the bad stuff happens.
Hey, Tommy, I didn't mean to interrupt. Tommy, do you have anything that you wanted to say or ask? You've been a little bit quiet. Okay. Just wanted to make sure, trying to include everybody. Sorry about that interruption.
We're very inclusive here at Prisoners of Truth. Very
yes,
inclusive.
very, very, very inclusive, for sure.
That's a wonderful thing to hear, you guys. I like to hear that.
That's right.
I think that we should view people like Martin Luther King Jr. said, for their character. And
exactly.
It's that's becoming difficult with the group mentality.
Yeah.
The character becomes this almost pseudo-religious pursuit, where you're trying to, in the case of social justice, you're trying to remove the oppression from the oppressed, and there always has to be this this dualism of oppressed and oppressor, and it just doesn't. It leads. There always has to be a group you hate. You have to have in a intersectional ideology, cultural Marxism, identity politics, whatever you want to call it. You need to have someone you hate, and I think that that's counterproductive as well.
Yeah, definitely counterproductive.
Sure, it helps with any time you want to control people to have a common enemy that everybody can hate. It definitely helps.
I hate to laugh, but spot on. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and the white male is the far left intersectionals version of the Jews. I mean, that's really what it is. They have to have their boogeyman, and it's just quite interesting to look at, like all the mental gymnastics going on to get there. But it's kind of funny. I remember when I think it was like 2015, when a lot of the Black Lives Matter protests were popping up. That's what I'd ask my friends. I'd be like, well, I don't feel like Martin Luther King would be for this, but they kind of threw him under the bus and kind of went the way of Malcolm X. That was more to their preference. The militant vibes.
That's definitely true. For sure. We haven't really talked too much about Jesse Smollett at all on the podcast.
Let's get into that.
It definitely, I just kind of want to mention it briefly. It doesn't have to get too deep, because it is definitely something that everybody's talking about. I personally am getting a little tired of hearing about it. But it is, for me, the most prescient point that he was caught, because I'm imagining a world where everybody buys this hook, line, and sinker. It's 2020. The debates are raging. You got Kamala Harris up there, or some other person debating Donald Trump. And this absolute travesty of an incident would have been used over and over and over again to demonize white supporters of the president. And I'm just so happy that it got stopped, because, I mean, there were definitely implications on the election because of this.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And, there was a Hail Mary play. It's called the U.S. Coast Guard story. Okay. There was a Hail Mary play. Of course, it was like the Patriots, and I think with 2007, they dropped it in the end zone. They dropped it, and they lost their perfect season. Yeah, Democrats are going to lose their imperfect season at this rate, because, Jesse Smollett was a blatant liar. And also, I love the story too, for another reason that I think deserves mentioning, that Good Morning America interview.
Pretty horrific.
he just sits there and he shows you that you can pretty much act your way. You can act your way through reality and convince people that real events happened that are really just theater. And they'll believe it. And to this point, they still believe it. They believe that he cried because it happened. They can't separate it.
It's absolutely sickening to me.
Now that we know that he's a liar, it kind of puts that into perspective. And I actually have a video on YouTube that talks about that just for a moment and kind of frames it as an acting performance. And I ask the viewer, I say, you be the judge of this, because this is theater. This isn't, it had he not been found out, like you say, this would have been a reality changing issue. A difference between war, a difference between a socialist friendly economy and a capitalist one down the road, potentially. Who knows how long that would take. But this could be a very substantial event that could swing an election. But of course, we got to see behind the scenes.
I did watch.
We sure did. And sorry, go ahead, Tommy.
Yeah, I did watch for the first time in forever. I watched mainstream stuff from CNN, and I watched The View. I watched a bunch of Trevor Noah stuff, and I'm actually very surprised because I hear a lot of these people who are very left-leaning and very anti-Trump say, yeah, we definitely have to change the way we look at these incidents, because as we can clearly see, they have reasonable opinions on this and take reasonable not conclusions.
Yeah, well, sure, they've been forced to. I mean, there's no standing behind that for sure. I mean, there's just no good way to stand behind that and keep it going.
Yeah, I don't mean standing behind Jesse Smollett. Yeah, I mean they.
No, they were critical. They were critical of Smollett. Yeah, Trevor Noah and The Daily Show did a pretty funny and critical, kind of like not trying to hide from the truth and just letting it be funny, and it was funny.
Yeah,
they let humor happen.
Trevor Noah did a fake trailer of the Jesse Smollett Lifetime movie that's actually pretty funny.
Yeah, well, I was glad.
It's a joke, but like, holy shit, if there wouldn't have actually been a fucking Lifetime movie about this.
That's the other quantum timeline, though. Like, exactly. How, one event led to him being found out. They just didn't. I guess, if you want to get, this is one of those things, though, where it's a little difficult. I'll be honest, and I always hate to go down this road, but we're talking about hoaxes. So we have to kind of drift into the conspiracy angle on this, I think. I'd like to say that it is slightly suspicious that Kamala Harris allied herself with Smollett early on. And there's clearly, if you watch the Good Morning America interview and you hear his testimony about the exact event, he really tries to sell and oversell the noose, the lynching element to this theatrical event. He's really trying to sell that. And I don't think maybe I'm out of touch, but I don't think lynching has been a major issue in the United States for like 60 years.
Well, and furthermore, pretty sure it's illegal regardless of the bill that she pushed.
Yeah, I was thinking that as well. Why do you need a federal anti-lynching bill? I'm pretty sure lynching people is illegal anyway.
Well, they tried to pass it back in December. I think Cory Booker, which is, of course, if you want to pass something, get Booker on the job, right?
Yeah.
Perfect. They tried to pass it. It didn't go through. And then, of course, I hate to say conveniently, but conveniently, like a month later, Smollett does this whole fiasco, and then they get it passed.
I have to say, though, I got to say real quick, as soon as I heard MAGA country, I was like, this is fake. I've never heard that. Not once have I heard anybody say something like that.
Not to mention in Chicago in the middle of the night, like
during the polar
weather.
vortex.
Yeah, fuck that.
And yeah, so I'm embarrassed of my city for sure. They just keep on keeping on with the bullshit.
Oh yeah, and a little bit off topic. They arrested R. Kelly because of the whole sex stuff thing that he is going on in Chicago as well. If I remember correctly, the judge who said R. Kelly's bond is the same judge who said Jesse Smollett's bond.
Oh gosh!
Which, what a coincidence! And by the way, happy Black History Month, everyone.
Yeah, we got Democratic
Month.
Democratic politicians in blackface. Jesse Smollett. Yeah. It's just I mean, the Democrats, they definitely are living up to their true colors. It's like almost as if it was the 1950s in the South or something like that. I mean, I don't know why they even want to pass these anti-lynching laws, because a lot of them are going to be getting busted. I mean, most of the lynching is coming from the left. I mean, just look at the MAGA hat wearing kids, like all these incidents with doxing and all that. That would be modern day lynching.
Hey, I'm gonna be away for a few minutes.
All right, all good. Do you mind muting when you leave, or?
Yeah, there's nothing on.
Oh, okay, all good.
Yeah, and I think just that term is so loaded and stupid, and like modern day lynching. What are you talking about? A lynching is a lynching is a lynching.
Yeah.
Like, I don't care when it happens or what. Like, it's just happening, and they have to use that ridiculous word because everybody understands that it's nothing. It's not a problem. It's not a modern day problem.
No, it's another example of them focusing on the past instead of the future. I don't know why. This is the thing about all of reality. It's very strange. Everything needs to be completely, has like a counterbalance and balanced out. And for some reason, there's all these weird contradictions. And one of them is that the left, they want to be pro-choice, but they want to restrict your speech. There's just all these contradictions within this ideology.
Yeah, it's strange. There's this almost like this narcissistic theme on that side. I don't know why, but it's so interesting because I've been through the ringer with relationships and stuff, and I look at like all these demands from the left, even the demands that some of my friends had. And I think to myself, man, it's like dealing with some like high maintenance like partner in a relationship. It's like you can't do anything right, and I don't like that. I don't like that at all. And I just, Anyway, kind of being a broken record here.
No, that's actually a great example though, because it's not so much about the left. It's about like Boone was saying earlier, the authoritarian versus the libertarian. And like, say if you are in a relationship, now I've been in relationships, I'm not going to talk about that too much, but I can say that not only in the relationships I've been in, but in my family relationships and work relationships and everywhere, you see a sort of micromanager kind of archetype emerge. And I think that, I like to be detail oriented, but I think that at a certain point it does feel like other people are trying to control you or they're trying to stifle you, and it might not be personal. It just might be part of how they manage their own reality. They might be controlling, and again you makes you want to psychoanalyze and ask questions like, why are you this way, but at the end of the day, they're the ones that end up, as power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And they want to centralize and they want everything grouped together over time. And they appeal to authority constantly. At a certain point, all the authoritarian stuff, it does all head in the same direction, which is tyranny.
Mm-hmm. Totally.
Yep.
It's funny, the crypto fascists are all about like the clown world thing right now, and like pushing like the whole. For me, it comes down to the canards of like people pointing out things that are wrong with our current society and blaming it on capitalism, but they're really talking about like anti-capitalism, like with trusts and monopolies and big government welfare for corporations. None of that's capitalistic, but they blame that on they blame those
No, that's
problems
very
on
socialistic, isn't it?
exactly.
Right? Like the
Exactly.
lobbyists, they're
So they
very
look at that
socialistic. They're like government contractors at that point.
totally, and we do have corporate welfare in this country.
Absolutely.
But they're all about like pointing that out and then laughing and mocking and deriding, which is a very good technique with persuasion, or it can be, depending on who you're talking to. And they laugh and they mock and they deride, and then they say, "Oh, well, the only option is like fascist control. Like the only option is we need to be in control." And it's always a racial thing with them too.
It's so ironic because they do this subversive clown meme, right? Where they're calling everyone else clowns, but all they're doing is proving that they're the clowns. Like, I don't know if they realize that, but like, just that mentality is just so backward. It's like they're making a joke out of themselves. That's why I say it's like it looks like mass like encouraged mental illness within a group.
Well, it's a cult-like mentality too. I mean, it's all following the same. At a certain point, what's the cutoff point for cult? Like at what point is a group identity taking over? Your decision-making process. And yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, I shouldn't comment on these individuals you speak of with the clown avatars. But I'll say that. Let me put it this way, persuasion-wise, clown avatars. I'm already out. I'm already not persuaded.
Yeah.
I think that you start by not being persuaded, and then you turn to, well, just how unpersuasive are they? And it sounds to me like they've presented themselves as deluded to some degree. If they think that controlling people, controlling other human beings is the only way forward, I don't find that very optimistic, and I don't find that to be a positive. I consider myself a futurist, and when I say future, I'm talking like a beautiful technological future. That I'm not talking a dystopian future.
Well, and it's funny you should say that, because I can tell you exactly what one of these guys would say to that. They would say, "Oh, well, you already live under Jewish control. You're already controlled by the Jews."
Are you kidding me?
Oh, I swear to God, that's what they would say. It's so fucking
that's
stupid.
Disgusting.
It's so stupid. It makes no sense.
And disgusting.
Yeah, it makes absolutely no sense. So they would blame it on the Jews. They would tell you you're controlled by the Jews. And here's the real kicker.
Xenophobic.
Here's the real kick in the nuts that makes no sense. Then they would turn around and tell you that they need to be in control of everything. It's like, wait a second. Were you just pissed off that the Jews are in control of everything? Now you want to act exactly like you think the Jews are? Like, what are you talking about? You make no sense.
It's in-group preference, man. At the end of the day, the only authority you can really trust is yourself. And when you start to turn your individual identity into a group identity, the only thing you can trust is that group identity. And that's where identitarianism can be very destructive.
Yeah, on both sides. And I feel like part of my sort of MAGA push or whatever in 2016 was such an anti-identitarian thing. And then to be here where we are now, to look around and see the identitarians on supposedly on my side, it's like, no, the whole point is to not allow group preferences, is not allow group identities to control you, because that is, I mean, it's inherently going to be abused.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah. That's the idea. Once you give power to somebody and you start to the power again, you start to go up the chain, you get to absolute power, and at that point, I'm not sure that the human psyche can handle. This is why President Trump receives a lot of criticism from, or early on especially, received a lot of criticism from the left, because they thought that his psyche couldn't handle it. He was too unpredictable and too immature or whatever, they had so many terms for what it was. But the reality is that, the message, the message that, I'll talk about 2016 for just a second. I do think that Bernie could have had a chance. The reason being that it was authoritarianism versus libertarianism. It was globalism versus nationalism. It was, the individual versus this group mentality. And Trump said, be yourself, be warts and all. Don't. He said you can, be who you want to be and create a brand for yourself and stand your ground. And that message is why he won.
I love, and I love that the be yourself thing. This is a little bit off topic, but I want to touch on it really quick. So I saw a video of some Black Trump supporters that were invited to the White House for Black History Month, and one of the guys, he was from New York. I think he had been in prison. He was like a drug dealer back in the day, and but he really got into the movement. And so when he was going to go to the White House, they said, "No, you've got a felony, you can't go." Trump said, "Let him in." I mean, I can't think of anything more amazing. All these people calling him racist and stuff. And I just love, like, when you said that he says, be yourself, that's what he's about. Like, he's, about giving a chance to anybody who wants to participate, in helping contribute to this country.
And it's crazy to see that demonized. It's really, because that's a really simple thing. And, like, it's really crazy to see people seize upon that and act like that's bad, especially people who seemingly prior to Donald Trump would have thought that was exceedingly good.
Well, I was born in 1984. I grew up with Barney the dinosaur. And so I know the message of everybody's special, and everybody has a place. To me, that's a message of empowerment. But at a certain point, I guess we lost our way in a sense where the everybody's special turned into merit doesn't matter. Donald Trump is all about merit. He doesn't look at almost anything else but how much money you can bring in, how productive you can be, how successful you can be. And he wants to promote that, it seems, And of course, this is the problem. This is one thing that I've grown to find annoying about anybody that shares this point of view, that you can't have a billion, somebody can't make $1 billion saving the world. You know what I mean? Where it's sort of like, I feel like we're demonizing a lot of these people, like, Elon Musk and Bill Gates. Anybody that has Bill Gates is hard to criticize because he's been so good about being charitable. He's donating like virtually his entire fortune to charity and to the development of the world and the saving of the world.
Isn't he help curbing like population growth in a way? Isn't that something you wanted to do? Or I forgot. Never mind.
I'm not sure about that detail, but in general, I find that people have an intolerance for this concept of billionaires can save everything because, at the end of the day, you have to. There's always a cost and a benefit. So the cost is centralizing power in a few individuals or corporations. The benefit is being able to afford enough food for 350 million people, or in terms of like. When you have so many people in your economy that can't produce, it does help for things to be cheaper. If you're going to have people in a welfare state, it does help for things to be very cheap. So the whole sort of like Amazon, Walmart, like there is this balance to be struck where you don't want the individual, as a libertarian, I don't want the individual mom and pop brick and mortar stores to go away. I want entrepreneurship to flourish. But at the same time, you have to balance out all these people that can't afford the same luxuries of the rest of the society. And how do you handle this growing population? Because the world population is gone up 2 billion people in the past 15 years? Is that? It's
It's
something like
definitely
that.
it's definitely rising. I think there's definitely a lot of merit to not being hateful towards the ultra productive, ultra rich class. Is a really big misconception among like socialists and communists and democratic socialists that these people are just sitting on their money, and that all of their money is representing money that is realm of anybody else. That's a totally selfish. It's a total misconception. It's a total misunderstanding of how economy works. They have no concept of investment. They have no concept of the way that you use your money at that level to make more money is you literally invest in people and industry, and that creates opportunities for people who aren't super rich and productive, like you said. In the economic sense, it does sound kind of mean to say people aren't productive, but we're not saying that you're like I'm not productive in the economic sense. I make twice the minimum wage. I'm not doing anything special with my life on that level. But there are people who are producing a massive amount of economic movement and a massive amount of production. And if not for them, we wouldn't really be here. Now, that's not to say that I agree with monopolies and trusts. I think that monopolies and trusts should be heavily regulated. I think that our government should get off their ass and stop letting monopolies and trusts fuck things over. And I also think that insurance is the biggest scam on the planet.
Centralized power is the common thread there, right?
Oh, of course,
so
always.
It's never good to have power too centralized. But I think there is this, I think, is it a 90-10 rule? 10% of any given group is doing like half the work, 10%?
Yeah, I think it's 20, a little more than 10%. Yeah.
20 and 80, it's called the Pareto principle, I think. But
the Pareto, the Pareto distribution, yeah. The Pareto, and it's true. It's and on an economic scale, it's a little bit more exacerbated.
Doesn't that model prove that like equality of outcome is not possible? Isn't that something like that? I saw an example.
It definitely proves that equality of outcome is going to be abusive. I mean, it's possible, but it's almost certainly going to be abusive to those 20%.
Pareto principle, yeah.
Now, somebody asked a question in here. I don't know how related, but they're saying, aren't special interests just productless job creators? I don't know if we were talking about special interests, but
depends on the special interests. They sell you political ideologies. They sell you what kind of special interest groups are you talking about?
I'm not sure. Hey, In Darkness, if you're still listening, if you want to elaborate on what you're talking about, what kind of special interest groups you are talking about, just let us know in the chat, and we'll respond as soon as you get to that.
Yeah, because I think that there's definitely certainly a subversive and negative aspect to special interest groups in the context of lobbying Congress. But I think what we were more talking about is just big productive members of the economy, and less the power that they exert over the Congress, which I'm not for. Me saying that productive billionaires are good for capitalism and good for everybody is not me saying that productive billionaires should be untouched by Congress and should also be allowed to have incredible influence over Congress. I think there's a difference between the current problem we have with special interests and billionaires being productive members of the economy. They're hand in hand, they're tied together right now because those same billionaires do have an exorbitant amount of control over the actual legislature, and way more than you or I or anybody who is just a normal person has. And I think that is definitely a problem. But I do see that as divorced from their impact on the economy.
It does raise a question, I think. When you think about the alternative to late-stage capitalism, when you think about going into a socialistic direction, for example, at the end of the day, they want to, if you're trying to strive for a socialist system, you have, your government, your government contracted, everything is a government. A government program. Everything is an arm of the government at the end of the day. And it seems that late-stage capitalism with the cronyism, it kind of goes in the same direction anyway, to some extent. It's
totally
kind of interesting. It's interesting to see that happen either way. and it does speak to this sort of, again, the power concentration and how it does make it difficult when you have money just flows upward because of how investment works. How I work in the financial services industry. I can tell you all about how capital gains and dividends work and how perpetual wealth is.
Mm-hmm.
It is extremely perpetual.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but this guy followed up to clarify his question. So he said, like domestic foundations acting like foreign agents, should they be dissolved? When he's talking about foreign interests, I mean public interests, special interests.
So,
sorry.
I'll need more clarification. Are you talking about like domestic people or groups that are like shilling or might as well be foreign interests? Is that kind of what you're saying? Like APAC or any other sort of like advocacy group for foreign countries? Is that what you mean?
So let's say Clinton's pay for play.
Sort of greasing the wheels for diplomacy.
That's not a special interest group. That's just Hillary Clinton being corrupt.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a good example of an individual selling their country out for money, and I guess you could call the people who they sell their country out to special interest groups, but it's not really how I think. I think of a special interest group as like a corporate representative who is lobbying for specific legislation, not necessarily people who have sold their country out for a shekel.
He might be referring to maybe non-governmental organizations, NGOs. Maybe not. I don't know. But yeah. Anyway, we do appreciate your questions. I mean, feel free.
Well, I'm actually I'm reading the chat now. In darkness, groupthink dynamics. What do you mean by that? In darkness, if you could reply to the chat. I'm just interested because I mean, we all kind of share some common viewpoints here. I don't know about groupthink dynamics. Well, I'm not sure what that means, but I saw that. In terms of domestic foundations acting like foreign agents, should they be dissolved? Reduce nonprofit status.
They make special interest groups. I don't know.
I think that, I mean, at the base of it, there's definitely a problem with corruption in any big government, and it's something that I believe a government should, in its founding charter, always state that the principle of this government should be to stay as restricted as possible, because it's the only way to ensure that it doesn't end up abusing people. And of course, it's always like, oh, we're going to do this good thing. We're going to do this good thing for these people. And then they end up
hell.
Totally paved with great intentions.
Yeah. Well, absolutely. I was going to say there, yeah. Cronyism. It seems that power concentration, it always rolls downhill. Power just rolls downhill. It doesn't stop. Once you have a little, you want more. It's just like any kind of incentive, money. People get taken over by greed. It's human nature, and I think human nature is what is missing in the frame of some of these ideologies that I think we share a common interest in critiquing, such as the social justice.
Yeah, well, it's also interesting to point out when these sorts of groups of people are acting the same, even when they are, if you ask them, they would tell you that they're opposed to the other. I think of social justice warriors versus Nazis. It's like you put them in a room, they're gonna act like they hate each other, and they're gonna tell you that they hate each other. But when you look at their opinions and their ideologies, they're both identitarians. They're both intersectional in certain ways. They both want socialism. They both want government to control certain aspects of the economy. They probably just disagree on which color the person behind the armband should be.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, who knows? They might have secret parties and get-togethers when nobody's watching. You never know. They might be in agreement. I mean, they're all anti-Semitic.
The gay Nazi furry community is what you're talking about right now. It's the confluence of SJWs and Nazis. The gay Nazi furries, and they are fucking degenerate.
Yeah.
I like the
Wait,
furries.
is this
You know,
actually
they keep life interesting.
What are you saying, Tommy?
is this a real community, the gay Nazi?
Yeah,
Yeah,
they're totally gay.
there are
Nazi
gay
furries.
Nazis. Yeah, yeah. I didn't know that there were Nazi furries, but
That's
Yeah.
truly intersectional there. You know,
That's very.
How does the furry and the Nazi and how does the gay and the furry? Who's oppressing who here? You know, we have to ask that question. I think the furries are oppressing me all the time, but that's, you know, again, it's all subjective. No, they're not oppressing. They're very docile creatures, if no pun intended.
Yeah. Oh man, it's good. What was I gonna? There's something else I was gonna say. You know, this is a little off subject, but I wanted to go back to like the hating white upper middle class, you know, academic or far leftist, intersectional feminist, whatever. And I had mentioned this before, and the thing that creeps me out about my friends like that is there's this weird like sadomasochistic sense to them where it's like this strange self-hating. I don't know like really how to place it, but have any of you guys noticed that? Like there's something going on there.
Absolutely. Yeah, I've definitely heard and seen what I would consider to be masochistic behavior. I think it's a masochist, you know, and there's nothing wrong. There's nothing right or wrong with masochism. If you want to hurt yourself, if you want to cut yourself, you know, I don't advocate harming yourself, but you know, it's your body, it's your life, it's your choice. I don't like to judge, but there is certainly a point where it does kind of become clear that, like I said, it becomes the depression and the pain and the sadness and the victimhood. They become addictive, and I think that at a point they self-identify, and it kind of holds their reality together to keep that victimhood up and to make sure that, you know, and it also it hurts people, of course, when they happen to be part of the group that they believe to be the oppressor. Now, then you're just hating yourself automatically. Either you give up your ideology or you hate yourself. That's a tough proposition.
Yeah.
I thought about with the Jesse Smollett stuff. First of all, it's very interesting that the demand for racism exceeds the supply. That's funny. And the left-wing politics in general, the cultural Marxist bullshit, etc., basically made a whole generation of people who think that, who basically being a victim is a lifestyle now. Being a victim is cool. Being a victim is an identity.
Hey, you can have a whole career if you're enough of a victim.
Exactly.
Yeah, and you know, like that's the thing that I always laugh about is, you know, me being disabled, person of color, whatever. I sometimes I used to joke and think about, man, if I defected to the left, I mean, I could have a huge platform. I could get all types of retweets, but I'm not that kind of person. I do not want to do that, and I think that's why I don't have much respect for some of the friends that are whining and complaining about these things, because, you know, I look at my situation and I could whine about being a victim all day long, and it's not going to do anything for me. And the thing that pisses me off is not going to say all, but a lot of the complainers, the people on Twitter that I've seen who get a lot of clout because of their oppression, have lives that are pretty awesome lives compared to some people that are really struggling out there who don't pull their victimhood card.
Yeah, because none of these people actually know what it feels like to be a real victim, to be really to really have a shitty life.
Right.
But the
well, if they did, they wouldn't be thinking it was cool or idolizing it.
Exactly.
Right.
Just remembered something about the blackface stuff. Who was outraged about the blackface stuff? It was white liberals. The I think even left-leaning people of color didn't give a shit.
No. I mean, I didn't see much outrage on that end.
It raises a question too, Samo, that well, Tommy was just talking, but I'm sorry to interrupt Samo, but it raises a question of the blackface. Has blackface run its course as a controversial subject, or is it nearing the end? Do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I don't feel anything for it. Like when it comes to like the blackface thing, you know, like I always equated it to like movies back in the day, and it's like, yeah, of course it's like offensive, but it was the 1930s. Like I'm kind of over it, you know. Now when we're seeing Democrat politicians in blackface back in the day, it makes me laugh, and I'm going to hold them to the fire on that one, because you know what? That's one of the standards that they would have crucified any of their political opponents on. So you know what? I'm going to go a little Saul Alinsky, and I'm going to hold you to your standards. You know, I mean, that's my favorite thing. I mean, that's like, I did that once as an experiment to kind of use their tactics. I was on Facebook once, and this was when Kanye West was at the White House. And this one friend, she was white. No, a friend of one of my friends was talking to him about, oh, Kanye's like, he's definitely mentally ill. He should go to like, you know, get checked in somewhere before he goes out in the public to speak. And I said, you know what? I don't think you should be making ableist comments against a person of color like that. And boom, shut it down right then and right there. So it's kind of fun. I like to troll.
Oh, that's beautiful.
That way, especially
what you just said was absolutely beautiful, Samo. Well, you know, it goes back to what we were discussing a little earlier in tonight's conversation about how it's becoming harder and harder. They're creating an environment where, like you say, the standards by what the acceptable standards of behavior are becoming so constrictive and restrictive and controlled that you can barely, they're making it so that you can barely do anything. And yeah, it's actually caused them to fall into this trap where they can't do anything anymore. They can't walk out the door without someone saying, hey, well, yeah, calling them out on this absolute, like I say, tyrannical, controlling behavior of political correctness and trying to regulate speech.
Yeah, exactly. And that's, it's a testament of, you should watch out, like, what you push, because, you could end up, you might think that you have an advantage for a while, but if the tide turns, you're going to end up digging a really big hole that's going to be very hard to get out of. You think about, remember when the Republican Party was dead for a while and they had no mobilization? Well, it's because of, their own folly to a point, but I feel like the folly on the far left is so hard that it's like, those types of individuals, the really fringe ones, they're just going to be decimated if they don't get it together.
Even CNN.
Well, and we're seeing it happen too. We're seeing the crumbling of the sort of mainstream control right in front of our eyes.
Mm-hmm.
Someone on CNN just called out AOC for talking bullshit.
Oh, good.
Yeah,
I can't wait.
Lost CNN. That's really saying something.
Yeah. Oh,
well,
man.
She could use a little wind out of her sails, because I do agree with those that say that she's perhaps she's irresistibly persuasive.
I like to call her occasional cortex.
Oh, like Lionel. I love that. Actually,
that's a good Lionel line.
Gad said that too.
Yeah, it's good.
Love Gad.
Yeah.
Tim Pool calls a left-wing Trump, which is not exactly wrong.
Not exactly.
Oh, it's not wrong at all.
Yeah.
It's very true.
Scott Adams uses blue Trump, and you're right, spot on.
Trump,
yeah. Tim Pool, yeah.
Or
I
RPOS. I like RPOS.
I swear to God, I feel like there's this big focus group studying Trump, after he won, and then like, AOC some clone that they took out of a lab, and they just like put the they downloaded the NPC scripts into her brain, and she's just out there doing her thing.
What does RPOS stand for?
What's that?
Scott Adams calls AOC RPOS, stands for racist piece of shit.
Okay.
She came out and said that President Trump was a racist. I mean, it's kind of a standard Democrat Party talking point that he's racist. It's kind of, part of their move set there. But she came out and said that he's racist. She didn't really break from the pack. Like Bernie calls him racist. They all call Trump racist. But yeah, Scott Adams says racist, not point of sale.
Yeah, well, Scott Adams referred to Spike Lee as a piece of shit today from the Oscars. Spike Lee was like doing his race baiting.
That's right.
But then there's a picture of maybe the last 10 years ago of Spike Lee like with Trump, and he really liked him at one point. And I'm just sick of the race baiting stuff.
Everybody really liked Trump. Trump was the fucking man. Everybody loved Trump until he ran for president. I mean,
in all of hip hop, from the 80s on, Trump was always referenced as this symbol of wealth, success. They all looked up to him. It's very obvious. And I bet you when Trump started running, he was probably absolutely shocked when people were saying he was this straight up racist,
I don't think so.
You don't think so? You think he was expecting
this,
it?
Yeah.
Just because he was running Republican.
Yeah. He was going up against the establishment.
It would be interesting. Yeah. Go ahead.
He probably didn't expect it to go this far, but I highly doubt that he was shocked by the fact that it happened.
Yeah, I guess that. Yeah, I could see that. It would be interesting to see what would have happened if he tried to run as a Democrat. I don't think he could have ever done it because it would have meant he would have had to be folded into the corruption.
Yeah, he wouldn't have the Democrats have superdelegates.
They would have Bernie Sanders him. They would have done exactly what they
would have Bernie Sanders him.
Yeah.
One could say that Trump's foresight of avoiding the Democrat Party situation there could be, a plus in his back pocket.
Well, I heard, yeah.
He could have gone either way. I mean, he was, I know more recently he's been a Republican, but I think back in prior to his Reform Party time in 1999, when he was sort of, questioning whether he should run in 2000, I think prior to that he was a Democrat. To my knowledge, and then more recently he's been Republican. But he could have run in either party.
He could have run Democrat, Republican, or Independent. He probably would have won either way.
I don't know. Well,
he wouldn't have won as an independent because independents don't win presidential elections in America.
It's true. It's sad but true.
Yeah, I think he would probably have a problem even winning 2020 if he were to go independent. That might be a sticking point problem.
Okay, hang on a second. He was a Democrat until 1987. Then he was a Republican from 1987 to 1999. Then he was again a Democrat from 2001 to 2009. Reform Party from 1999 to 2001, Independent from 2011 to 2012, and now he's a Republican since 2012 again. Yeah, Sticks said it, which is totally true. Trump is a business Democrat who ran as a Republican for opportunistic is the wrong word. I can't think of the word.
Well, I think it was.
He couldn't have.
It was strategically advantageous.
Yeah, strategically, exactly.
Well, I think he was using the pendulum effect strategy, where you see, Republicans in office for 8 years, Democrats for 8 years, like you see this kind of swing. So Obama was in for 8 years, like he was running after that, and I think he went to the other side. I also think that I've got a theory, and I don't know if there's any grounds to this, but I've got a theory that he kind of saw what politicians were up to, and he got really freaked out and was like, you know what? If I can do something about it, I will. Because, I was thinking about the story about that billionaire Jeffrey Epstein, the guy with the Lolita Express. You guys familiar with that? Yeah. Well,
kind of a creep. Yeah.
Yeah. So just a little bit of a creep, right? A little more
Not
than
just
that.
A little.
Yeah,
Not just a little, according to
no.
reports.
Yeah, but so there are those stories about how the Clintons were seen on the flight logs for his plane, and there is a story. The Democrats are going to try and smear Trump for this, but there was like something that I read or that I watched where they're saying that Trump, I guess, was on one of those flight records, but it showed that he like abruptly left. And so I wonder.
Well, it's also funny. People try to connect Trump with Epstein, and it's like, oh yeah, you remember the time where Trump like banned him from Mar-a-Lago because he was being a total fucking creep? It's like, oh yeah, they're real buds. I'm so sure.
Yeah, I doubt that, but yeah, I think that it was sort of that thing because he's a Democrat where it's like, okay, he got to see the top of the top, and he might have seen what they stood for and realized he didn't want any part of that. And he was even seen in 1987 on Oprah. She asked him if he would ever run for president, and he said, only if things got so bad in this country that something had to be done. So that's just the way I see him.
It's believable.
Yeah.
You can look at the compilations on YouTube. Trump said the same things for for over 30 years, and it was never a problem. It only started the same things he said for 30 years became a problem once he started seriously running for president, which is another point where you just see the hypocrisy, because he was on all these late night shows, etc. Where he said exactly the same stuff for 30 years. They had him on. He was on Saturday Night Live a year before he was elected.
Yeah, and really the problem is the Democrats weren't able to blackmail him, and that's really why they don't like him.
Yeah, that's why it makes no sense for Trump to run as a Democrat, because he would never ever get the nomination.
Well, I did.
What do you guys think about Bernie running this time? Do you think he's gonna do Do you think he's gonna do the same thing last time and bow down to Hillary or whoever the DNC picks? Because they're not gonna pick him.
I have no idea.
Bernie.
If Bernie Sanders would be the nominee, I think Bernie Sanders could actually win.
Man, I hope not.
I would say
he might have been able to win in 2016, but he's got no chance in 2020.
Well, I would agree with Boone on this one.
Look at Venezuela. Yeah,
much of a chance. I don't think he has much of a chance because not only is he going up against, President Trump if he receives the nomination, and to my knowledge, the Democrat Party hasn't really picked him as their golden boy this time out. It doesn't seem like they don't seem very receptive to the idea. They've never been open arms with this idea, and also that the fact is they did pass that rule change where you have to be a member of the Democratic Party to run. But he obviously
can't just become a Democrat like overnight.
I think he could, but I think that the fact that they instated that rule in the first place is just a step back. If you take a step back and look at that decision, it kind of gives you an idea of what the answer is going to be at the end.
Especially when it comes to the Democratic structure, because maybe not when it comes to Democratic voters, but the corporate neoliberals who run the Democrats are not interested in Bernie Sanders. They are not interested in Bernie Sanders. They're not. He will never get the Democratic nomination.
Yeah,
I could be wrong, and if I am wrong, I'll eat crow. But I really don't think
Bernie Sanders is never going to be the president of the United States.
Tommy?
And I was a huge Bernie supporter. I donated hundreds of dollars. I was a huge Bernie supporter. He's never going to be president. I'm sorry.
Sorry, what were you saying, Tommy?
Yeah, I was gonna say he's I think he's the second highest in the polls right now for the Democrats, with the exception of Joe Biden, who didn't even announce yet. So,
isn't that predicated on the top one being somebody we don't know yet?
The top one right now is Joe Biden, who hasn't announced yet that he's gonna run. But I think of the ones officially running right now, I think Bernie Sanders is the highest. I mean, this doesn't mean that the Democrats won't just Bernie Sanders him again, which they probably will.
Exactly. And that's my point. It's even if you are right, and I think in a lot of cases you are right about how the Democratic Party constituents are actually feeling about Bernie. I think the real hiccup is the DNC. The DNC won't do it.
Yeah,
they hate him.
I don't know who they polled though. I don't know if this was Democrat Party members or general public. I'm not sure. Really
I don't
funny.
trust polls.
Yeah, that's another thing. Really funny. If Hillary Clinton runs again, and if Bernie Sanders runs again,
A.J. Goodman's saying that she is. It wouldn't shock me. It would not shock me when she gets in, because and it wouldn't shock me if Bernie does the same thing and all of Bernie's money ends up going to Hillary.
Yeah, exactly. If the very same thing happens that happened 2 years ago, Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders run, Hillary Clinton, Bernie Sanders runs in the general election against Donald Trump, and Donald Trump wins again.
I think that Bernie, I want to give a more substantive answer for why I think Bernie can't make it, because I know I speak in absolutes. I literally have a set of tweets called "People That Won't Be POTUS," and I will eat crow if I'm wrong, but I stand by it. You can search for that on Twitter. But
hey, comment right here from Moxie Hart. She says, "Hi everyone, enjoying your conversation." Thanks, Moxie. Appreciate it. Sorry to interrupt you, Jeff.
Hi,
Continue.
I think that when we talk about the mainstream Democratic constituency, the voters, what is their core ideology?
Money.
I mean, just in terms of the zeitgeist on the Democratic left, I would say that it is, when you look at the fact that they push identity politics so often, that it's pretty much one of the defining things that's driving passion and energy on that side. When you talk about Bernie Sanders, there's a lot of I think there's a lot of bad blood there, because he's been blamed for, he was blamed in the Russiagate thing. He was blamed for Hillary losing. There was the Bernie bro narrative. There's just so many things going against him. The fact that he falls into the white male category.
Yeah,
there's so many different things. Since identity politics don't necessarily matter to me, but I'm not the target demographic of the Democrat Party propaganda. Clearly, I mean, clearly there's a great group of people that are going to look at Bernie Sanders and are already rebelling against the idea.
Yeah, the fact that he's an old white heterosexual rich man is definitely not helping. Didn't they already Me Too him?
Yeah. There was a Me Too against one of his staffers, I believe. But yeah, I mean, like, they've really kind of pushed that. They called him a sexist when he was running against Hillary, and there's so much baggage there with Bernie, and plus the fact that he kind of cucked to Hillary and to the Democrat Party establishment when people were looking for a bold agenda, a bold person. And he had been that person to that point, but then Trump just took all that energy. And like we were discussing earlier, some people, literally Bernie voters, voted for Trump. I think Cassandra Fairbanks was one of those people that just said, I can't do the mainstream neoliberal Democrats. They just rub me the wrong way. They're not contributing positively to society if they're introducing all this hate with the deplorables and social justice, where they have to point at people with MAGA hats and say that they're fascists, and the whole paradigm.
Right.
Yeah, by the way, that's why I think that Bernie Sanders could win, because he could theoretically win because of the people who voted for who went from Bernie to Trump. Because if it was Bernie versus Trump in this election, in the upcoming election, how many of these people who voted for Trump, who would have voted for Bernie, would then vote for Bernie? That's the question. And you have, of course, the Democrat Party loyalists who just vote blue, whoever is on the tickets, doesn't matter.
Well, I'd have to think that if Bernie became the nominee, he could win. I mean, I wouldn't rule it out completely. I'd say it is only about a 10% chance if he made it to be the Democratic nominee. But he would be going up against somebody that has been very successful as an incumbent as well. So there, a lot of people, and I do believe that the energy, the momentum is very big. And I think that actually Bernie's 2016 campaign, some of those primaries in the middle where he was rolling through and winning, 7 or 8 states in a row away from Hillary, he showed that how much, energy and momentum matters in electoral politics. And I think that a lot of people that would be going out for the Democrat Party and voting, blue, like hard blue partisan voters, might not be energized by Bernie due to all that baggage. But that's another consideration as to why I don't think he can win.
Fair enough.
But no, he could. We all thought, what was the chance Trump would win? 1%.
Yeah, according to HuffPost, it was 3%.
Yeah. So reality can surprise you,
Yeah, but again, A, polling, and B, that's a statistics fallacy. The just because something happened doesn't mean it was the most likely outcome to happen. Who do you think is going to be the nominee?
I think it'll be Kamala Harris or maybe Booker, or if Hillary gets in, maybe even Hillary.
Yeah,
I legit think that Hillary probably has a high chance of getting it. We probably have a higher chance than people are really thinking about right now of seeing a Trump-Hillary redux.
Right. I definitely wouldn't want to see that. That would be like such a bad choice. I don't know why Hillary would even want to do such a thing.
Because she's megalomaniac and narcissist.
Yeah.
Hillary Clinton is the world and America owes her this. This is her rightful position to be in power.
I think that Hillary Clinton, this is going to sound very strange, but I think that Hillary Clinton would have a better chance of winning against Donald Trump than Bernie Sanders at this point. And the reason being, I think it's because I value, and when we're trying to analyze, like predict, I do think I might value the identitarian zeitgeist on the left and how that directs their opinions more than you might think. So, like, for example, this is my perspective, and I know it's a little bit provocative. I do not think a male candidate can beat Trump. I don't believe a male candidate can beat Trump. I think it has to be Hillary Clinton, Kamala Harris. I would like to see Tulsi Gabbard perhaps have a credible shot. I hope she really does well in the primary, and just to have this sort of nice, slightly more balanced anti-war and progressive voice in there. But I do think it would need to be there's going to be this push for the first female president. I think that is something that has to be satisfied. And I think that is going to be certainly a factor, maybe not the defining factor, but certainly a factor in determining who can actually beat Trump once you compare. The fact is, Trump could not be as, I guess, aggressive in his rhetoric against a woman without fear of rebuke.
Well, haven't we seen the opposite of that in 2016? I mean, maybe it's just because Hillary Clinton's such an unlikable bitch, but nobody seemed to care when he threw it in her face.
No,
I agree.
Hillary Clinton. I mean, everyone knows Hillary Clinton is basically the devil.
It's funny, but it's very true. It's like I'm looking for the horns.
She's actually there. I mean, she's Hitler. Like, if you really want to talk about pinpoint, call somebody Hitler.
She's one
no. Merkel's Hitler.
That's a little bit more on point because of the German connection.
Oh, okay. So we're stereotyping here.
All Germans. No, Germans are beautiful people. I love Kraftwerk. You guys like Kraftwerk?
Kraftwerk is good. The fathers of electro, right? Of house. Isn't that called electro? Wasn't it?
Yeah, you could call it like electronica. You could call it.
They definitely influenced hip hop for sure with Africa Bambaataa and all that.
Big time. Actually, I want to say rest in peace, Mark Hollis of Talk, who passed away at 64. That news came out tonight.
Oh, damn.
Rip. Worm food.
Yeah. Yep. He's going into the recycle bin of the simulation. So,
are you big on sim theory?
Well, I think that it's plausible. I think it's plausible. I don't know if I believe in it per se, but I think that the possibility is there, and I understand to some degree how the math bears out. So it could be, there, no matter what, there's a certain point beyond our awareness, and whatever is beyond our awareness, whatever is in that quantum space, or however you want to talk about metaphysics. It could be a computer program that's been evolving for millions of years, and we could be deeply, deeply embedded in several simulations. We could be many levels deep, but again, I ask questions like, how does that affect my day-to-day life?
Yeah, I don't know. I almost had an existential crisis the other day. I took a high dose of edibles, medical, legal, and it really hit me, and I got like a bad trip with a lot of anxiety, and I was thinking about like the simulation theory and stuff like that, and I was like, man, what if it's true? And I was just like freaking out. And so my conclusion was, I don't know, the simulation theory thing, it's just too creepy for me to think about. I don't even, I just don't even.
Well, there's no way of knowing, right? It's kind of like one of those. It's kind of almost like quasi-religious. It's like, and I think it's a really good take on it to say, well, how does this affect my life? Because I think that applies to a lot of esoteric shit that people, they go on and on about how they know about the universe and how they know about this and that, and it's like, okay, well, and it's done what for you? And
then you look at their bedroom.
Exactly, how is that helping
everywhere?
you?
The bed, yeah.
You see the trash not taken out, and you go, maybe you should apply your life philosophy to this whole taking out the refuse thing. You know what I mean?
No, man, it's so deep and esoteric. Doesn't matter, man. It's like, well, fuck you.
Hey, can I'm sorry. I want to read these comments that were pretty hilarious, talking about Bernie and AOC, and somebody said Bernie sure generates a lot of money for AOC, and the other person said, Moxie said, there's a thought, occasional cortex sniffs out the sugar daddies. Yeah, that's for sure.
Oh God. So you're saying she's a Democratic pimp?
No, Bernie's the pimp.
Oh, Bernie's the pimp. Oh God.
Well, let's get ahead of ourselves here, because we're thinking in a very we were just talking about sim theory, so we're thinking in a postmodern sense. So why don't we talk about 2024? What do you guys think? Do you think they're trying to set up RPOS for
I think she's definitely going to run.
2024.
I think she's going to get smashed. I think she's going to get utterly smashed. I don't see her winning anything. I mean, I could be wrong. I hope I'm right.
I actually think that this is 6 years from now. I actually think that 6 years from now, the SJW slash postmodern slash
intersectional
proto communist era is more or less over.
You think they'll be washed out?
She's on the downward trend for sure. It's not going well for her ideology. I mean, now who do I think is good? I am looking forward to 2024 because it's going to be the first time since 2016 that it's non-incumbent. So unless of course Trump loses in 2020, which I don't think is going to happen, but I think it'll be somebody very much in the vein of Donald Trump, to the point where it might even be like Ivanka. Like I think Ivanka's legit going to run in 2024.
Jared Kushner actually. Oof.
You think Kushner's going to do it? Oh, the white supremacists would hate that.
Well, no. The only thing that creeps me out about him, I'm kind of joking, is the address of his office is 666. It actually is. Kind of funny. God. It is. It's true.
It's sure. It's like just a coincidence. Who knows? Yeah. Maybe he's a.
It's so funny how much on the numerology. Numerology, man. Dude. I mean, you can get really deep in that, and it starts. If you're a little afraid, if you get anxious about sim theory, don't think about numbers too much.
Yeah, numerology though. I do think that there is something to numerology, which is crazy, and I know Scott Adams talks about that, but.
There is something to it. I don't know if it's just a strange form of ordered, pattern recognition. That's the thing. I don't know how much of this quasi-religious and philosophical stuff is just our coping, our pattern recognition. It is very strange. But it's great that you said Ivanka, because I was thinking Ivanka versus AOC, that would lock in if it were a female candidate. This is like the full identity politics side of things. If it were a female candidate on both sides, you'd have to have a female president, and that would actually be a beautiful thing. It would be the glass ceiling.
Yeah,
truly
I just
breaking
don't give a
for a lot
fuck.
of people.
I'm sorry, I just don't give a fuck what your generals are. Like, I just want you to be good. That's all I care about.
I agree with that.
And I understand where you're coming from with it, because yeah, well, in a political standpoint, obviously it's huge, and it's totally, I get that. But for me personally, I'm just revolted by it. I'm just like, fuck. Can we just get past it already? Like, I guess we can't. And it's the funny thing is, because I grew up in like 90s progressive Central California, and like I never thought of myself as anything other than just a person. And like I never thought of people in the terms of race or, whatever. Like, it's just people. And then all of a sudden, that goes from being progressive and up front in the early 90s to racist. All of a sudden, it's racist to not see color. It's like, what in the fuck?
Yeah, I think it's ridiculous.
I want to say something. This is not a joke, by the way. I was born in 89, and I grew up in the 90s using, unironically, the word Negro. Yeah,
because it just means black, right? I mean, it's not.
Well, maybe
no racial
Germany,
especially in Germany.
It also goes to show how just backwards my parents were. They were not racists. They were just. This was just. They grew up using that word, and then they kept using it. And again, living in the middle of the woods, you don't really realize what you're doing. And yeah, anyway,
it's like we were talking about a bit earlier. It might have been pre-show, in fact, or I'm not sure if it was during the show, but we were talking about how the Overton window is shifting on things. And it is certainly getting to a point where, like I say, it's the social justice stuff, the pointing out, bringing race into every conversation, bringing gender and sex into every conversation, bringing class into every conversation, all these different things that, bringing background into the conversation first thing, not talking about what the person brings, is kind of counterproductive. And but it creates this minefield where if you're talking intersectionality, I think Sargon of Akkad was talking about this, like which like I said, like which group is being persecuted when you have the for example, like a Muslim woman. There was something about how, like, like the intersectionalists have to choose which group is more oppressed between two sometimes, because they're both oppressed groups, but this one's oppressing this one for this reason, and this one's oppressing this one for that reason. And it just becomes this system where you have to, like, it's almost like you're dehumanizing people and turning them into numbers. How much oppression?
And your attempt to be not racist, you've become incredibly racist.
Exactly. Which is why I call that first video of mine. Actually, I should mention it if I didn't mention it earlier. My first ever video, and I backed up my entire Twitter account before I did this. Data and tweets. I did this video called in which I discussed generating racism. And it's sort of a satirical and a provocative title, generating racism, because I'm talking about what you're saying, where when they introduce, in the pursuit of good intentions, in the pursuit of morality and equality and equity, they're introducing sort of this divisiveness and this separation and this hatred into the conversation in order to achieve their good goal. And it just, I don't know. I do think there is a shelf life for it, but I'm not sure if I'm optimistic about the next 5 years.
Hey guys, sorry to interrupt, but I saw this headline I wanted to mention. It says, Pope's top financial advisor, George Pell, convicted of child sex abuse. So it's the most senior Catholic cleric and ever to be charged. Sorry to interrupt that, but that's seems pretty big right there.
Yeah, but that's the Catholic Church.
Yeah, I guess it's
is that breaking news? Like,
like 55 minutes ago this article dropped.
Well, we were talking about the media zeitgeists, and Scott Adams, who I watch every day.
Same.
I watch every day. I watch Styx Hexenhammer every day.
Same. Got to start with that spoon clanking.
I need someone to insert rationality into my life. Like, some days are less rational than others, and I need someone to just give me a dose of the truth. Something close to reality, something predictive of reality. And Styx is, nobody's perfect, unfortunately, but Styx is pretty damn close to getting it right most of the time. So, but Scott Adams was talking about how the Catholic Church, the recent influx of Catholic Church stories has the same pattern as the racism stuff, the Smollett story, the Northam. Like, it has that fake news pattern where you're starting to see a ton of stories that are, you're starting to see the anonymous sources stories about the Catholic Church. You're starting to see that those things pop up. So it seems that the Catholic Church might be the latest target of political intrigue.
Yeah, and it's about damn time. So here's the thing, like my little theory. I like to theorize. It's just something I enjoy. But, with this Epstein thing, the Patriots owner getting busted, there's the R. Kelly, and then stuff with the Catholic Church. In my mind, I guess in a perfect world, what I would like to see, and who knows if it's going to happen, is I'd like to see this Epstein really go down so that we could see this trafficking network that he has. And because there's a thing called...
No, I'd love to see that. Yeah. I hate to say that, but I'd love to see that. And I want to see Harvey Weinstein's laptop. I actually do want to see what's... I don't want to see the content.
Right, but you want to know what it... Yeah. Right.
I don't want to see what's on there, but I do want to actually have that information available to the authorities and the police. Well, I want it to be known to people just how expansive this evil is.
Well, yeah, and I think that if we get to see things happen the way we'd like to, what's going to be unveiled is this network of what they call modern day structural slavery, I think. you know, like you got like Nexium and all
human
that.
trafficking of children,
human trafficking of children and women, and you know, we're gonna find out
disadvantaged people. Yeah,
yeah, and I think we're gonna
that
find
are
out
weak and they can be easily manipulated.
yeah, and I think we're gonna find out that Hollywood is really big into covering that up and stuff. I mean, you know, Andrew Breitbart, a true hero in my mind, rest in peace. You know, he actually had a tweet about even Podesta. This is a little bit unrelated, but he even tweeted about Podesta shortly before he died, talking about how he was a cover-upper of child sex trafficking operations. The tweet's on his Twitter still. And so I think even back then people were talking about this, and it would just be amazing. I can't imagine how the anti-Trumpers will feel, the ones that are able to actually accept this. I wonder how they're going to feel when they realize what they've been supporting.
Well, I definitely think that there's something to
supporting
elite pedophilia. You know, who knows what it is? I don't know. I don't have really strong opinions on Pizzagate. I don't have any strong I don't have any evidence, but I think it's a pretty easy thing for most people to wrap their heads around, that there are people out there who are interested in controlling people through blackmail, and that the best thing you could ever blackmail somebody with is kid fucking, because everybody generally in the entire world hates kid fuckers for good reason.
Exactly, yeah. But I mean, yeah, that's kind of in the realm of conspiracy. I'd like to see some concrete things come out.
I'm a little careful about that.
Yeah, no, so am I. And so, yeah, and I don't claim, I'm not an expert on anything. I'm just a dude that's curious, that watches YouTube videos and tries to get people together to have some conversations. So, you know, I don't really delve there. So, but my eyes and ears are very open to these court cases coming up, because, you know, that's the arena right there. That's where, if anything happens, we're going to get concrete evidence out there to vindicate some people's theories, possibly. So
for sure. And Samuel, on that note, you do a great job at that. You know, your goal to set out and bring people together has flourished, I think. And I thank you. I appreciate you for letting me be a part of this.
Hey, well, I thank you guys for just being open-minded. Like, to tell you the truth, the reason I even started a podcast is when I made, and Tommy remembers this, when I used to just make random videos on YouTube, and one day I was like, I want to start a podcast. So if anybody wants to join, just reach out. And that's when Tommy reached out, and then our crypto Nazi friend reached out before we knew about that. But yeah, but I mean, that's what I'm all about, because with where we're at on the internet, the ways we can communicate with each other, you know, it's a beautiful time. It's almost like a renaissance of sorts, where just normal people are reaching out and connecting and talking about these things. I mean, I think the founding fathers would be very glad to see some of those things happening.
Totally. It's the death of controlled media. It's the death of corporate propaganda. I mean, of course, there's always going to be people putting propaganda out, but you know, some YouTube channel is not the same thing as multi-million-dollar corporations, and it's a really good thing. It's a good thing for information. It's a good thing for people. And yeah, I think that's pretty much a really good bow on it, you know, as far as the new media, what it is, and what it's going to replace.
It's going to get down to well, actually, I was saying on our chat earlier that Naval Ravikant and Scott Adams were talking about the long tail of media. I mean, you're not going to see the mainstream media, what we now call the mainstream media, the Hollywood and the Broadway, go away. Those markets I believe will always be there. Although, you know, a large Epstein-style, Weinstein-style size story could totally take down a larger chunk of Hollywood than we anticipate. I mean, I do keep myself open to that they, you know, we might find out some, you know, very, very big names have been involved in illicit activity. But in the meantime, I think it's really great that like you say, we're able to communicate on a deeper and more meaningful level, a more truthful level, because I think ultimately what Samo was talking about, the desire for truth is what we're really looking for. And the only way to get there is to hear as many perspectives in the world as we can, as many purviews, and to hear what people have to say, and to make sure that they're, I'm a major advocate for free speech and an internet bill of rights, so that everybody has a voice and everybody can just, say what they're seeing, and we can, work together to make the world a more habitable place.
Yeah.
Both rhetorically and physically.
So, guys, how do you feel? You think we've touched on everything? Is there anything?
Yeah, I'm about tapped out. I think I've sorry, go ahead, Tommy.
Yeah, I was actually going somewhere when I told you about my childhood thing before. In 1998, Blade came out. And when I was like 11 years old, so I watched Blade for the first time, probably 2000, maybe 2001. And Blade was just an awesome action movie. And then 20 years later, you have male Catwoman, aka Black Panther.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone acts like this is the first black superhero, and now I have to give a I didn't give a shit that Blade is black when I was a kid. This had no role whatsoever in me enjoying the movie or not enjoying the movie. It's just it didn't play any role. And now this is the driving factor. This is
why do you think, Tommy? I think you would probably agree with me. Why do you think Disney is getting so much backlash about The Last Jedi, Disneyfying entertainment, sort of, trying to make it seem like every time somebody that they, like I say, I hate to go back to the same, I call it a modern religion, social justice. They just insert it.
Yeah.
And the fact is, I think that civilization in general, I think that the human race has gotten to a point where we don't think in those terms anymore. It's not innovative to look to feel that way with a film like Black Panther, a beautiful movie. But yeah, I agree. I agree that it's like we didn't look at race before, and now we're kind of moving in the wrong direction on this. We shouldn't be viewing people by their group. We should be looking at the individual. And if we judge them at all, judge lest ye be judged. We're judging people by their character and their actions, and it, yeah. Oh, and Blade, yeah. Actually, I actually do have to say on that subject that Blade has been my online handle for about 20 years, and it came from the comic actually, because Blade, who is the same character from the movie, he was a member of, I think, the Midnight Marauders or some Marvel. It was like the Gothic. Ghost Rider was part of this team, and Blade was one of the characters, and I think it was like the Night Crawlers or something, Night Stalkers.
Okay.
I think it's called the Night Stalkers, and Blade was one of them. But yeah, like I don't remember thinking about it as a race thing either. Like I don't look at a character and go, oh, this guy's white or she's black. I don't look at it that way. It's just never, not the way I was raised.
I hate that obsession, because I remember I was at a friend's party. My friend, who's very into the social justice warrior stuff, and we were hanging out. Me, like disabled person of color. He had a friend that was gay. He had a friend that was Chinese, and he literally said, he's like, you know what? He's like, I think my house is the most diverse house in the neighborhood right now. And I'm just thinking to myself, like, how sick do you have to be to just like constantly think about that kind of stuff? And it's like, how do you not realize that it is racism? I call it intersectional racism. It's just ridiculous to me, and it's becoming a religion to some of these people.
That's a great way to put it, because in my controversially titled video that I mentioned earlier about racism, I call it altruistic racism. Similar concept, I think, because it's sort of like they're not trying to hurt anybody with this. They really aren't.
Right. They aren't at all.
They believe that they're doing the right thing. They're convinced that they're acting in a moral fashion to improve the world, but they don't realize that by inserting this, and the internet has made it, has accelerated the rate of how outdated some of the this prejudice. This prejudice is becoming completely outdated because people are they have more information and they just know better. And I think that social justice is we've crossed the threshold where it's beginning to undermine that. And the bad result is outweighing the good intention.
Well said.
Regarding The Last Jedi, well, it's two things. A, Last Jedi is an objectively bad movie, and B, Last Jedi. By the way, for anyone who wants to have an in-depth analysis, watch the reviews of Mauler, Mauler. It's a 3-hour review, or maybe 5 hours. I don't know. He makes long reviews. Dishonored Wolf has a different handle by now, but Dishonored Wolf, Last Jedi, and of course the Plinkett review.
Love Plinkett. Love. I'll do a shout out to Red Letter Media.
Yeah,
that's a great.
And the second thing is Last Jedi is just packed full with anti-capitalist SJW, forced diversity, strong female character. Bullshit. Oh yeah, and see, they destroyed the lore of Star Wars. I personally, I wouldn't say I'm a Star Wars fan. I really don't give a shit. Star Wars is a movie like any other movie for me, but I understand why fans are pissed at The Last Jedi.
Yep.
I wouldn't consider myself the biggest Star Wars fan. I'm actually more of a Star Trek kind of guy, and I'm talking not the recent Star Trek Discovery, not so much the Enterprise, but more like the Next Generation and Deep Space Nine mostly. But I think that everything you said, Tommy, but it's just I think it was kind of a little bit too contrived too. I only saw it once, and I have a desire to see The Force Awakens again. And I've seen the other Star Wars movies many times, but I have no desire to rewatch The Last Jedi. I just don't have that desire. I feel like I've seen it already.
I think I turned it off halfway because all they did was recycle all the iconic scenes from the old movies. In fact, that's what Hollywood does. They just regurgitate things. I don't. It's very rare. You don't see as many like brand new like blockbuster types of movies like you used to see. It's all politicized or just regurgitated.
I think they're too afraid of losing money on these things too. It's become very corporatized and family friendly, and of course, I call it Disneyfied. They've Disneyfied it. They've basically ruined it with their. And the thing is, it was sold under this, and I won't talk about the movie for too much longer because it's not worth it. But it was sold under this premise that Rian Johnson was going to flip everything on its head, and it's kind of deeply ironic that the movie's biggest flaw is that it's not dangerous enough.
Yeah, it was supposed to subvert your expectations, but I mean, all it did was shit all over Star Wars. Like, it subverted your expectation to see a good movie. It didn't subvert your expectations within the Star Wars universe.
I mean, there are things in the movie I actually like. I have no problem whatsoever with that they killed. Oh yeah, spoilers. That they what is fucking name, Snoke? They killed Snoke, and I have no problem with the way they did it. I actually like that. I gotta admit, when I watched this movie twice, shitty, filmed in the cinema on my computer in shitty quality. Because I give shit. I don't pay for movies.
Yeah, no point.
I pay for good movies. I'm definitely gonna buy Overlord on Blu-ray. Anyway, and when I watched this movie, I liked it when I watched it the first time because and when I watched the Maul review where he goes in depth, I like every second I was, why did I not see this?
It's a really good movie. I really enjoyed watching that, and it just felt like a World War II movie that was different, and then at the same time, it did the things right about World War II that other World War II movies don't do, like the way that people speak
Oh,
and just the languages.
I'm talking about The Last Jedi. I'm not talking about
Oh,
Overlord.
I'm sorry. I thought you were talking about Overlord.
Oh.
Overlord rocks, dude. That's the Gene movie.
Yeah, Overlord is a good movie. Yeah, Overlord, I'm gonna buy Overlord. But yeah, I watched Last Jedi twice, and when I watched it, and I liked it when I watched it, and I didn't think about I didn't think about whether or not anything makes any sense, and I didn't think about or the extremely obvious SJW propaganda that it is. And I was actually a little bit ashamed when I watched Morley's review that I didn't pick up on any of this, because this is a really, really, really bad movie.
Well, I was really disappointed in the SJW part of it, because I was shipping Poe Dameron and Finn the whole time. That's the couple I wanted to see. So if you're talking intersectionality, I didn't get to see the actual intersection I was looking for.
Ha! Gay. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, no. I mean,
No.
I just felt like it. The other plot line was a bit more. It was less natural, because Rose, I believe the character's name is, didn't have an emotional connection with Finn from the previous film. I don't think that Poe or Finn's sexuality had been established by that point, and it felt more.
No.
There was more narrative continuity with that angle, but of course they, injected that extra subplot into the film.
There's a fourth point, by the way, where everyone hates Star Wars now. This is just the absolute contempt that the creators of Star Wars have for their fans.
Yeah, but that's not new. George Lucas fucking hates his fans.
Yeah, but okay, no, that's different. George Lucas never got on Twitter and called his fans racists and sexist.
No, he didn't, but he did fucking shit out the prequels, and that's a slap in the face.
Yeah, but that's just George Lucas being incompetent.
Hold on.
That's completely different.
Hold on.
That's not...
Who came out on Twitter? Who did come out on Twitter and call everybody sexist and racist?
Everyone. What's her fucking name?
I think you're just talking about for not liking the movie. Like there was it was a backlash against people not liking the movie.
If you criticize Star Wars, it's just because it all like Rey because you hate women.
Oh, of course, yeah. Was it literally the? Was it literally the cast and crew of the film, though?
No,
yeah, in part,
no.
John Boyega, I think, did it. Ryan Johnson does it all the time.
Okay.
Yeah,
that's weird.
Kathleen Kennedy, I think, is the name.
Not surprising, but it's kind of strange.
For sure. Well, guys, I've got to get running. This is running a little longer than usual. I got some stuff to get to, but it was really, really fun talking to you, man.
Yeah,
I had a really great time with you on the cast, for sure.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're gonna wrap this up. We appreciate everybody who listened to this, everybody who commented. We love all the beautiful comments. This was a great time. We'll be back next week, and have a good night, everybody.
Thanks everybody for